we can end homelessness. We actually know how to end homelessness, and we've known how to end homelessness for a long time.
Homelessness is not inevitable. 0.18% of the population in the U.S. are homeless. That amounts to about 500,000 people on any given night, not including those in shelters or emergency housing. About 1/4 to 1/3 of homeless people are veterans. Up to 15% of incarcerated people experienced homelessness in the year before being locked up. Many formerly incarcerated people depend on homeless shelters. Formerly incarcerated people are nearly 10 times more likely to be homeless. PrisonPolicy.org says, "We find that rates of homelessness are especially high among specific demographics: people who have been incarcerated more than once, people recently released from prison, people of color, and women. Black people, Indigenous people, and those who identify themselves as belonging to multiple races make up disproportionately high percents of the homeless population, with Black people only being 13% of the general population, but making up 40% of homeless people. In the 50 most populous cities in the U.S., Black people make up the majority of homeless people. 70% of the homeless are individuals, with 6% of that being under 25. The other 30% is made up by homeless families with children. About 100,000 children experienced homelessness on any given night in January 2018, which is about 1 in 5 homeless people. LGBTQ youth are 120% more likely to experience homelessness at some point than non-LGBTQ youth. About 1/3 of homeless people are estimated to have a mental illness, with 25% having a severe mental illness at any point in time and 45% having any kind of mental illness. With this comes increased numbers of homeless people with addiction to alcohol or drugs. However, these factors can be both a cause and an effect of homelessness. According to the National Coalition for the Homeless, there are a few economic factors that largely contribute to homelessness in the U.S. Some of them include inability to access healthcare/pay medical bills, loss of job opportunities, lack of public assistance programs, and inability to find affordable housing.
I want you to meet a young man named Benjamin Williamson. He's just 17 years old, an honors student whose story paints a very bleak picture of a broken system.
People in homeless shelters are twice as likely to have a disability than the general population. On a single day in 2015, over 30,000 adults and children sought refuge from domestic violence in emergency shelters and transitional housing. 13,000 requests for services were unable to be met, with 63% of these being housing-related. In New Orleans, after Hurricane Katrina, which happened in 2005, thousands of people's houses were destroyed, with low-income housing in particular raising in rent after being rebuilt. In the same area, in 2009, 40% of those in homeless shelters were full-time workers.
Here we in our own town, and they will not give us nothing.
After Hurricane Harvey hit in Texas, there was an increase of 13% in homeless people from the year before, with 1 in 5 newly homeless blaming Hurricane Harvey. With natural disasters becoming more common due to climate change, displacement of people is to be expected, not even getting into the already detrimental effects of rising temperatures and polluted air on unsheltered homeless people. Now, during times of COVID, 1 in 6 renters are not able to pay rent on time, with the biggest burden being on renters of color. With eviction moratoriums being rolled back, the future is concerning, to say the least. Lack of affordable housing is a general issue, along with stagnating wages. According to the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, a full-time minimum wage worker cannot afford a fair market rate 2-bedroom apartment anywhere in America without clocking 97 hours per week. 66% of bankruptcies are related to medical problems. 530,000 people filed for medical bankruptcies even before the pandemic, when 12 million additional Americans lost their employment-based health insurance. The Coalition for the Homeless of Houston/Harris County's annual homeless count in 2020 had 1 in 7 people say they were unhoused due to the pandemic. Homelessness is often treated as a crime, with millions of dollars in cities going to law enforcement and incarceration of homeless people. In an average mid-sized city in Colorado, for example, it could be $3 million annually.
Warning, what happens next may be distressing to watch.
Criminal records due to homelessness make getting a job more difficult, thus resulting in continued homelessness. Those living outside are said to encounter police on average over 20 times in a 6-month period.
Officers are seen throwing more punches as more police arrive on scene.
The Weingard Center in LA says they can spend $10,000 per year to house, feed, train, and get them a job, along with support and follow-up. LA spends $35,000 for the average homeless person as is, $47,000 per person if they are arrested. Over 60 communities, including the state of Delaware and Connecticut, have eliminated veteran homelessness. 4 communities have eliminated chronic homelessness. San Diego and Houston were both tasked with implementing Housing First programs that gave homeless people housing before giving them any requirements. The idea is that people are better able to help themselves when their basic needs have been met.
The ideal things that I needed, and I got it.
And this has been proven by studies to be correct, and is used by Housing and Urban Development. Houston decreased their homelessness 55% after being one of the areas with the biggest homeless population in the country, and eliminated completely their veteran homelessness. They did this through development, renovations, and incentives to landlords to accept housing assistance, as well as establishing voluntary treatment programs. Though there was a spike in homelessness due to COVID and Hurricane Harvey, with tens of millions in federal aid, Houston expects to house 5,000 people by 2022, eliminating chronic homelessness in the city of Houston and Harris County. They will also use these funds to support staff and provide additional housing services and improve shelters. San Diego, on the other hand, decreased homelessness by 19% and did save millions of dollars, but with a high rate of return to homelessness after 2 years. They spent millions on housing and shelters, but did not overhaul systems as effectively as Houston. They spent more time building up the current system. Small solutions are not effective, structural ones are. In the same vein, criminalization of homelessness and over-policing only costs more money and causes more suffering and only worsens the problem. Wages need to go up and job training needs to be provided. Social programs for LGBTQ youth and domestic violence victims needs to improve, as well as a massive increase in mental health and drug treatment programs. We need to explore non-carceral solutions and support for those previously incarcerated. Most of all, affordable housing needs to be made available as soon as possible, with a focus on eliminating housing discrimination. Homelessness is not only cruel and unnecessary, it is illogical. Labor shortages are not solved through prison sentences and evictions. Societies do not function properly when so many are struggling, either homeless or on the brink.
The biggest hope is that the day will come that when I first wake up in my apartment, I'm not worried that I'm still on the street. When I wake up and I'll know I'm at home.